This is the Policy Director for the BC Civil Liberties Association, Michael Vaughan.
Thanks. I'm going to be brief. I'm going to talk a little bit about the fact that we have a collision of crises here. We have a Canadian crisis in public confidence and police oversight. We have a crisis of confidence in police accountability in Canada. And that crisis has butted smack up against the democratic crises of stifling voices of dissent and demonstration at intergovernmental summits. Now, the G20 story we witnessed in Toronto is more or less the same story we've seen at every G20 since its inception. And that story is remarkably similar to just about every single summit in recent memory. A fundamental undermining of political rights is consistently taking place at these events, with the ever-escalating numbers of virtually arbitrary arrests of demonstrators, journalists, passers-by, mass and grotesque violations of rights, inappropriate and disproportionate use of force. The BC Civil Liberties Association called successfully for an inquiry into APEC. We joined others in calling unsuccessfully for an inquiry into the policing of the Security and Prosperity Partnership. And now we're joining you and thousands of people across the country calling for a public inquiry into G20. Yes. And we have to be successful. Yes. What has happened in Toronto is part of a global trend of using these summits as a Trojan horse for militarization. These events have a now famous script. Each event, the security budget is more outrageous than the last. Each event, the security needs are said to be so great that we must accept the suspension of the normal rules of law. Increasingly, we're hearing the call that we must accept the logic of what is called the space of exception. We are supposedly outside the rule of law for a very good reason. Now, simply put, in Canada, as a constitutional lawyer, I will tell you, there is no outside the rule of law in Canada. There is no special designation, special zone, special event, special time period in which we say all bets are off for the Constitution. It is simply put the most fundamental of our democratic rights that the rule of law applies to all at all times. And when the rule of law is shattered, for example, by the requirements that lawful arrests, the requirements that you have articulated grounds, when they are ignored on mass scale, and citizens rounded up with every appearance of being arbitrarily arrested, aggressively dispersed from areas in which they were designated for demonstrations, and secret laws may or may not have been enacted to give supposedly new police powers. I echo the words of a criminal lawyer who's defending one of the first people who was arrested for violating the supposed public works laws that provided for these special new police powers. The lawyer said at the end of an interview that he gave on television, he said, "I have to hope and pray that what we saw at the G20 was gross negligence, because if it's something else, it's almost too horrible to consider." We have to at least consider it, and not only do we need to consider it, we need a public inquiry to get to the bottom of it. Canadians need to know. We need to understand what has happened on this mass violation of human rights. I have all kinds of things that I can say, but I don't think I can add anything to the personal testimony that you've heard. I'm going to keep my remarks brief because I know we've got one more speaker. I just want to say that this is so absolutely critical, and thank you for coming out for this. We're going to keep calling for it. We're going to join you for keep calling for it, and we're not going to let go. No way are we going to let go of this. Okay, thank you very much.